approach it is that question of, do you make the character you want to be? Like, is this the person I wish I could be? Or do you use it as an opportunity to say, I want to try being someone I'm definitely not? And I want to sort of, experience, for me, as seen last night, I actually often will play Big Dumb Barbarian because that lets me approach things in a way I would never do in my real life. Now, then the question is, do I end up actually knocking down a door, in real life? Because I was like, oh, that was so much fun. But I do
kicks the door in.
I do think, sort of getting back to your actual question, part of it is what Tommy just said there. Part of the thing is to make sure you occasionally do. If you're getting stuck on a character, you're having it bleed through, try playing a different character. Not constantly. I'm not saying I'll give up on your paladin, but just like for one session. And it can help you just sort of broaden to what you were saying of remembering this is one of your roles. You can do other things. You aren't just that one character. And it is part of what's amazing about the experiences. We get to sort of live different lives.
And I think to your point, just the first point you made there of the comparison of are you rolling up characters aspirationally, or are you playing things that are so divergent from you? And I think that's why, for me, I've run into less of that issue, because I made an intentional choice from the very beginning that I will only roll up and play characters who are completely unlike me. Because as an actor, that's what I want.
Very nice, because
the last three games we played with you, there was
in the horror panel,
bisecting bodies.
Just in the one game.
No, and don't get me wrong, I don't feel bad in any way about playing the same character. And a lot of the people that made fun of me for that when we were younger, oh, you're playing that character again. That character is now written in fiction. That character's versions of it are now canonical in a lot of systems. The character's canonical in Shadowrun now, because I'm writing for Shadowrun, I'm working with Shadowrun, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna make the character canonical. It was a bucket list item, and I have no regrets. So don't feel bad if you cling to something and love it. So
just convert all your work colleagues into playing, and then it's not weird anymore.
yes. No, I'll repeat it back. Perfect.
D&D covers a lot of the psychological need pyramids, like self-love, belonging, and safety. But when we have these instances of player bleed, or someone who becomes so dependent upon the session that we have imposed that they kind of become ingrained emotionally into it, as DMs you have a responsibility for making the game fun, but that sometimes results in unpleasant experiences for the character. If you have your players taking away with that and bringing it into their life, how you as rather experienced you handle that when it's starting to negatively affect something, you just can't wait to get your character to be God now, you don't feel good, or what
Right. So to paraphrase that, role-playing in D&D satisfies a pile of psychological needs, but then sometimes it can go to the point where it becomes that obsession or that addiction that how do you as a dungeon master, or even other players at the table, if I'm mad, work with that one player that does go down, because it does happen. People do get attached to their characters, and when their characters get killed, or when something happens, it becomes an unpleasant experience at the table for some people. So how do we balance that?
To me, a sideways sort of point to that, but it's the same issue, is also when a player takes their character in a direction that makes things uncomfortable for the other people in the campaign. And it's back to this is someone, something they feel they need to express. My character needs to be this way, and yet it is actually causing, pain to the other players. And so it's this, sort of different side of the same coin, but the same point, what do you do when there's a player whose investment or whose concept of their character and identification with it is causing trouble either for them or for the other players. I do think, first and foremost, it is something where you do have to have a conversation outside of the game. And to say, whether it's I'm worried about you, or whether it's, maybe you should try and play NetGame for a week, or certainly when it comes to affecting other players, it's a thing where I had those conversations with the entire group, and basically reminding people this is a story, and not only is it a story, it is something that we are all doing together for each other. And it can't become just about you. You have to remember that you are part of a group. And again, whether your behavior is a problem for you, or whether it's becoming a problem for everyone else, remember that you are part of it, and that we're doing this together. And that's like two kind of concepts woven together, but you want to...
Yeah, no, well, I mentioned earlier, like, we're not therapists at the table, but we are, as friends and as DMs, responsible for our, our friends' well-being, so we care so much. I was talking the other day, I just pulled it up so I wouldn't forget the exact name of her book. A very good friend of mine, Dr. Megan Connell, just came out with a book about therapy, using D&D for therapy. She is a licensed psychologist. And so nobody should use this book to try to be a therapist, but I'm sure that if you are dealing with these types of issues at the table, it would not be a bad thing to read. And it is called Tabletop Role-Playing Therapy, pretty easy. You can find her on social media at Megan Syd, P-S-Y-D. But I've never encountered that, mostly because when I'm playing casually, I'm playing with my friends, and I am not playing, and I can deal with my friends' problems that they have more on a friendship level. And when I've DM'd, and I'm usually a player in those games. I have a forever DM, and I love him very much. But when I'm DMing, it's usually, strangers at events, whether it's conventions, that thing doesn't come up very often, except one time where I was DMing at D&D Castle. And it's a 4-day vacation in Europe, and one of my players at the table got a phone call the very first morning of the event that his father had passed away. And he and his brother was at another table with another DM, and they decided that it was best if they stayed. We were all in England, and they needed the time to process and just play. And as the caretaker, as the host, as the DM, as the person responsible for their good time, I did have to make adjustments. Now, it wasn't an attachment to their character that was the issue. It was more of, I had a very bloody, death-filled campaign that I was constantly thinking about the words that I was using, being sensitive to, saying the word dead. And there was an issue with like a parental attachment to a character. And so those are things as DMs that you just have to kind of be aware of, but it is also not your responsibility as a therapist, and nobody should have to take that on.
Sometimes you need to know when to take a step away from the table and just take a break. I've heard stories about people who try to go play a game because they want to get away from something, only to have something happening in the game that sets them off again. And I think there is a self-awareness that needs to happen where you need to understand, yes, playing will help me feel better, but I don't think there's a way for me to avoid what's bothering me. I had a very good friend of mine who his whole character's arc was that his father was the big villain, and then his real-life father died. And so I had to have like a brief conversation with all the rest of the players, like, okay, we need to be very careful about what we're saying, what we're doing, because I already asked that person, he said, I want to play the game, this is what's going to help. But even then, you have to be keenly aware that they may want to play, but that might actually not be the best thing for them at the time.
Also, and I don't know what it is, but like having a session 0 is really important before you start a game. So before you get a new group of players, finding out what they are comfortable with, finding out if they are okay with character death, discussing with the entire group what happens when a character death occurs, and how that can lead to, like a failing forward thing where we get to either resurrect or make a new character or have them know, like a friend of the character, a family member. Finding that all out ahead of time, and there's no restriction that a session 0 has to happen just at the beginning of the campaign.
I just completely agree. I mean, that is the thing that we do have to remember is that the rules are here as a foundation, and you can change or adjust anything you want. So that key point of, you can say at the start of the game, characters will not die in this game. You might be defeated, you might, lose the
As
encounter.
somebody has no character death.
Yeah, that basically we are making a story, and it is is something you can always do to say, what kind of story is this?
And just as a final comment there, because I know you want to move on.
No, I want to add a point, but you go ahead.
Oh, okay, good. No, this is it. This is also why, especially if I'm playing with a group who is, I'm not super, really familiar with these people, like I know them inside and out, I will always run a session 0 where we begin both by just like discussing the campaign as players, and then running through a one shot to get like an idea of chemistry, how we all play together, how it runs, and I have all my players fill out an actual sheet of lines and rails, so that I know, hey, it turns out you have like, just horrifying, terrible claustrophobia. That might not have come up in conversation, but I'm about to squeeze you guys into coffins, so thank you for me knowing that now. Because the last thing you want to have this at the table is where a thing you just didn't know about, and not for their fault, not because they messed up, but it just didn't come up, just all of a sudden grind the game to a halt because this person really cannot handle what's happening, and you do want to make sure that you're all able to be comfortable together and enjoy the game as a group.
Most of the problems that we ever had growing up at our game table had nothing to do with the character interactions. It was all friends fighting, and then when the friends start fighting, they come to the game table together. It's very difficult for them to not just start rolling initiative against each other.
I've had so many like awkward post-breakup games.
Oh God! And also, I developed a rule that I bring to the table so long as the players are willing to do it, and especially on stream or video or whatever. And that is, I give everybody the choice of the proverbial plot. Armor. So what I say is, you die when you want to die. Because the mechanics might kill you. But if a goblin scores a critical hit and kills you in some really sad side of the road conquest when you're on your way to the big epic finale, I don't think the cinematics of that make sense for the table. So I tell the character, you don't die. Something happens. You hold the death card. Cash it in when you're ready. And then they tend to do that in really epic moments, like, oh my God, like this is the moment where I'm going to stop and defend and block the guys from getting out while you escape. Go, go, go! And then they just throw the death card down and that's it. That's their ending. And then that gives a moment for role-playing. You get people at the table crying, this character's going to die, and it's really exciting and therapeutic, but I usually just say, you hold your death card, you drop your death card when you want to die. Yeah.
And I'm stealing it.
Please do, please do. It's actually it removes all pressure of your character dying, but when you do mechanically die, you now have this really powerful role-playing tool, and it makes the game so emotional because you know at some point before now and the end of the campaign, that character's going to cash that card in. So then things start getting real cinematic. So we got enough time for one more question, and then we're going to do some plugs. When I hear the questions from, okay, we'll go to the very back. Just real quick, we'll try and get the next one. Yes.
So my friend plays D&D, and I came up with a character idea, and I was wondering y'all's opinion on having a mantis shrimp as your animal companion.
100% yes.
A mantis shrimp?
Yeah.
You carry it around in a jar.
No, in your pocket.
No, it's a shell of a good.
It's going to do some damage there.
Not if he's my friend.
Kelly's point.
Oh yeah, Denny. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to the next question. That was a great question. Go ahead.
What was the most rewarding part about creating Eberron, and what was the setting that didn't get chosen?
Most rewarding part about creating Everon, really is just an amazing experience to have people around the world who are creating stories and enjoying something I created. And I did in 2009 actually travel around the world, like couch surfing and DMing for people. And again, just getting to see people in different countries and different backgrounds, playing in something that came out of my brain was just an amazing, mind-boggling experience. I feel incredibly lucky.
Really good. My friends are actively now seeking to try to make this published. So I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it is a very cool, now being converted finally to 5e. It started off in 3rd edition, we converted it to 3.5. We skipped 4th, we won't talk about that. But now it has been slowly, we've been playing it in 5e for test play reasons and also just because we still play. But but we finally stopped playing 3.5 with it, and it is hopefully going to see publishing soon, as long as they all have their own day jobs. I'm the only one who does this professionally out of the group of us, so I'm helping them get that to the light of day.
But it's basically My Little Pony.
It's not yet. I've done that. It's all My Little Pony and Transformers.
Well, and so we basically got 5 minutes left. We can fire one last quick one out. We'll go over here. Yes.
So, as a person that has only played games on virtual tabletops, and I've seen many different games eventually playing in person.
Do it.
What was the biggest change for you during when COVID hit and about playing mostly online, or challenges that you guys faced playing virtually or over Zoom calls?
I'd like to make one just brief point about that, and then we can all chime in. But the one thing that actually ground my home game to a halt after a handful of virtual sessions is all of us are, in my home game, we're all actors and improv artists for the most part. And we didn't realize how much we desperately rely on physical cues from each other to be able to create like the scenes that we play. And so we did a few sessions and we realized this just feels so weird. And then if ever like a debate or an argument or any kind of contention came up at the table, or if one player might be doing something that made another player like feel a little bit odd about it, they're not totally cool with that, we couldn't rely on picking up a very, very subtle cue of being like, oh, I can tell she's not loving this, let me just reach in slightly. And that just created enough of that little bit of friction that we had to just can the Zoom games.
For me, being a very old school player, we were very reliant on minis and terrain. My forever DM and I, between the two of us, own every single piece of Dwarven Forge terrain, and if you know what that is, it is an expensive hobby, but also like we come up with huge builds, and that is part of our experience. Moving over to digital was interesting. Roll20 is the best, in my opinion, sorry everybody else, but best substitute for that. But I do play 4 different games over the last 3 years, all digitally, and again, just coming back to in person for 1 of them, or 2 of them. But we play one of the games on Roll20, which is amazing, but we still keep cameras up because of the visual cues. My Thursday night game, which is like industry professionals, and our DM is Chris Lindsay from Wizards of the Coast, and we're very lucky, and he's awesome. We play just over Zoom, Theater of the Mind, and it has really changed my opinion of how that works. Also, starting to do these streaming games at conventions, it's all Theater of the Mind, so I've quickly changed from having to have, oh, I'm exactly this much away from another person, can I hit them? Versus, yeah, you're in a general area, you can hit them, and it's fine. So the playing in person, feeding off of each other thing is the biggest thing, but I'm just
So I'll be the black sheep. We were naughty. We decided to make our game table our bubble. So we got together a lot more than we did before the pandemic hit, because we were so busy with our lives that when the pandemic hit, we were like, all right, everybody's in their homes, nobody's going anywhere. There's 4 or 5 of us. We're gonna get together. We're gonna play D&D. Anybody breaks that bubble, no one comes to the game. And then we broke the bubble. We got to play a lot. And Devin, we were playing a lot of D&D because there was nowhere we could go. And we all met centrally at my closed and sanitized cafe. And we just we hung out and we kept the lights low and we played. And we played and we played and we played. And I gotta say, it really helped.
But to your personal experience of not ever playing in person, really, with people, you should do that. When you're coming to these conventions, you should seek out games. And AL is great. The person you need to talk to is this gentleman right here. Wait, Thomas. And he will fill you in on everything you need to do.
Okay, 1 minute left.
The thing that was the most different for me is I didn't realize how much I cross-talked until I had to do online games, because you cannot do that.
No, you cannot.
Especially on Zoom, they just go quiet.
Yeah. Plug yourself. We got a moment to plug. Go.
Hi, I'm Devin. I'm a professional GM and writer for Limiter Studios. We do MRA, Legacy of Mana. We have a Patreon, a Twitch channel. We have a book coming out in the future, along with several more. We do have cards somewhere.
Cards are all done.
Oh, excellent. That's a good
They
one.
were done.
bunch of crap. I'm online. Find me.
Oh, God.
That was quick. I'm Elise Teague. You can find me online at Geeky Pinup. It's terrible, but it is what it is.
D&D Castle.
Oh yeah, I always forget to mention certain things. Again, I listed a couple of my recent books. I also do board games, including Betrayal at House on the Hill. Widow's Walk was my design. Kingdom Hearts Talisman. I have a really fun geeky party game called Geek Out, and I am a DM at D&D Castle. I mentioned it briefly earlier. If you want to have a really fun geeky vacation in a 14th century castle in England, you can play with me as your DM. I custom write an adventure just for you. You can find information at dndcastle.com, and I don't know, you can talk to me after this. I don't see the person in the audience, but last night somebody wanted a book from me, a copy of Tasha, if you are here, but I don't see you, I do have one.
I am on social medias and such as Help Keith and also as Together Studios, that's TWO. You can come to togetherstudios.com, where you can see all the games that I'm doing, and as mentioned, I am on Patreon if you want to try and actually play a game.
And you can find all of our D&D streaming and stuff and all the shows we're talking about. Everything is pretty simple. It's twitch.tv and then youtube.com/6sidesofgaming, all spelled out. Follow, like, thanks. Great. Watch all this cool stuff on there, including at Greenwood. And the Patreon is /legacy of Mana, which we release a lot of maps and stuff in the world that we created that we've had a lot of fun with. And so thank you guys so much for coming out here Sunday morning and watching. Do a special shout out to the Gaming and Manufacturing Association for bringing us to these panels and to the games we played all weekend long. Gaming and Manufacturing Association is a wonderful group that brings retailers, publishers, manufacturers, and everyone else together to build awareness of gaming. It's a non-for-profit, so check it out. The Gamma